ladies and gentlemen. Oh man, I am ready. I am ready for the wildest thing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to straight up tell you how it is. The TSA no-fly checklist just got leaked. Now, of course, for those of you who don't know what a no-fly list is, I'm somebody who's pretty ethnically challenged when it comes to airports. I know a lot about airport security, okay? Boy, oh boy, the TSA loves to check up my bunghole from time to time. But let's get started. So what is a no-fly list? A no-fly list, in the United States at least, is a special list that some people get put on. When you get put on the no-fly list, that means flying in, out, or over the United States becomes a pretty big challenge on commercial airlines, okay? Imagine you go to the airport, okay? You sign in, you do everything, you check in, all right, you're ready to go get yourself checked through security. Somehow your name gets tripped up. Maybe it could be a false flag, because sometimes you have had cases where people who've had similar names to people on the no-fly list just get dragged away by airport security. You got Homeland Security, you got TSA, you got flashlights up your rectum. That's pretty much how the entire scenario plays out. Now, for a lot of journalists, a lot of human rights advocates, this can be a bit of an issue, all right? For the safety and security of the country, obviously the list exists so that, actual criminals, actual individuals that are of a terroristic quality can pretty much be weeded out. And if these people or any of their aliases show up at an airport within the US or are flying near it, you can bet security and customs will be there to drag those individuals away to some godforsaken black site in some part of the world. So of course, why are we talking about it today? Well, it took a cybersecurity breach, an incident, for the TSA's list to end up being leaked. So how did the story of kind of epic hacking begin? All right, it basically took less than a day. Now, of course, this comes from a Maya blog, who's an InfoSec security individual, who basically provided how to own an airline in 3 easy steps. So that first step starts off with boredom. Now, the boredom step typically involved this individual using something known as Shodan. For those of you who don't know what Shodan is effectively a search engine for internet services. Internet servers, I guess you could say the easiest way to put it out is, this is basically a search engine to look for servers that are connected to the internet using varieties of filters, okay? Typically, it's a search engine of things known as server banners, which is effectively metadata for servers that are interacting all over the internet. So again, the way that it works, all right, aside from being a cute reference to System Shock, Shodan effectively allows you to look for certain types of servers. Now, what happened was this individual was looking for servers known as Jenkins servers. Now, Jenkins servers, for anybody that doesn't know what they are, Jenkins servers are effectively servers that allow you to automate processes. So typically when you're building projects, deploying projects, and automating, aspects of them, Jenkins servers are created. So effectively what happened over here was they looked through a bunch of Jenkins servers, and around 20 servers or so later, they ended up finding what is known as ACARs. Now, for those of you who don't know what an ACARS is, I know there's a lot of new things that I'm mentioning. This is the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. So basically, aircrafts use like a telex system to basically communicate back and forth between aircrafts and ground stations. Okay, so this is an example of what is an ACARS message. Okay, it's a way for airplanes to communicate between one or the other. So here's the thing. When somebody finds information like this floating around, you know that you're playing with airline companies, and that can be a pretty spooky endeavor, okay? There's a lot of sensitive information that's floating around. So one airline company in particular, Commute Air, was the one that actually ended up having an exposed Jenkins server. Now, while this might not be special, it's time to understand just how much access our hacker friend even really had. So according to them, let's not get too excited. Just because we found a funky Jenkins server doesn't mean we'll have access to much more than build logs, which is true. It quickly turns out that while we don't have anonymous admin access, yes, that's quite frequently the case. God, I love Jenkins. We do have access to build workspaces, which means we get to see the repositories that were built for each of the 70-ish build jobs that existed. So at this point, it's time to dig in and do the boring practice. Now, of course, most hacking is not Hollywood style. It's really just having a video up and going through a bunch of builds, a bunch of files in order to find that one shiny piece, that one thing that makes the whole process worth it. So 2 minutes into basically looking in and finding this one project called ACARS incoming, they ended up finding a FTP server, a SFTP server, secure file transfer protocol, and they ended up looking into ACARS incoming for Navtech. Navtech, which is an Airbus company detailing ACARS information, okay? So again, I don't even know how much I can show you. Nothing is super duper sensitive, but you can see that information is from the 1st of January 2023. So again, super new information, last modified literally on the 6th of January. So this is, again, information that is very, very recent, okay? Now, of course, some of the information, and again, I'm going to blur out a fair bit for you because I don't know what is entirely sensitive and what I cannot show you. But for anybody that wants to know what I'm looking at, effectively, this is ACARS messages being sent around. And the only people that are going to understand it are obviously people working in the aviation industry, people who are communicating from airplanes to ground systems. As I kept looking at more and more config files in more and more of the projects, it dawned on me just how heavily I'd already owned them within just half an hour or so. Hard-coded credentials there would allow me to access the NavBlue APIs for refueling, canceling and updating flights, swapping out crew members, and so on. Assuming I was willing to ever interact with a SOAP API in my life, which I sure as hell am not. Jesus Christ. However, this is where it gets interesting. I kept looking back at 2 projects named No Fly Comparison and No Fly Comparison version 2, which seemingly take the TSA no fly list and check if any Commute Air's crew members have ended up there. So again, it's literally designed to make sure that nobody working for the staff of Commute Air is somehow on the TSA no fly list, because as you can imagine, if that was the case, it would make it pretty hard to schedule them to fly through US commercial airspace. So again, what had happened was they found hard-coded credentials and S3 bucket names for Amazon Web Services clouds. So, however, I just can't find the actual list anywhere because it obviously gets deleted because of people prodding in and out of these servers, potentially. So again, they had all these, the Amazon Web Service endpoints and secret keys, access keys, so on and so forth, which they've blurred out so nobody can abuse them any further. So at this point, they started talking to a reporter from the Daily Dot, and they basically gave him a rundown that in about half an hour after they started talking, they ended up finding AWS credentials. I now seemingly have access to pretty much their entire AWS infrastructure via AWS, CLI. Which is the command line interface. Numerous S3 buckets, dozens of dynamic ODB tables, as well as various servers and much more. Commute really loves to use AWS. AWS, for those of you who don't know, is Amazon Web Services. A lot of enterprise clients and a lot of commercial services will use AWS Cloud in order to facilitate their big businesses and most of the network stuff that they have going on, because they just like to pass that off to people that can handle all of that for them. The security, the distribution, so on and so forth. So at this point, they ended up finding and looking at a test data repository, and they found 3 CSV files: employeeinformation.csv, nofly.csv, and selecty.csv, all committed to the repository in July 2022. The no-fly CSV is almost 80 megabytes in size and contains over 1.56 million rows of data. This has to be the real deal. And then, of course, they got a confirmation that, yes, it is in fact the leaked no-fly list from 2019. So obviously, we're missing a few years of data, but yes, they've got the complete list confirmed from 2019 and before. So they looked even further and they found out for the crew members, they had full names, addresses, phone numbers, passport numbers, their pilot license numbers, whenever the next line check, which is basically, them getting tested again, as far as I understand, when it comes to, piloting. I had trip sheets for every flight, the potential to access every flight plan ever, a whole bunch of image attachments to booking for reimbursement flights containing yet again more PII. Airplane maintenance data, you name it. I had owned them completely in less than a day, with no skill required besides the patience to sift through hundreds of Shodan results. So again, obviously when it came to the no-fly list, they obviously acknowledged that the information is highly sensitive, and they believe it's in the public interest to be made public for journalists and human rights organizations. So again, if you're a journalist, a researcher, or a party with legitimate interest, this person is actually allowing you to get access to this information. I don't know what the legalities for this individual are. I don't even know if, like, I generally have to believe with them leaking this information out, this is huge. There is no way the TSA or any Homeland Security organization in the US is going to let this run by. But of course, this is a story of how one of the most secretive documents in the United States, one of the most important documents when it comes to the safeguarding of the country and, making sure that the right people or the wrong people, in the eyes of the government, of course, can access U.S. airspace. That ended up being leaked through a company that ended up having one of the most insecure servers hanging out for the world. So for a lot of people watching, yes, this is in fact how one of the wildest hacks of 2023, and remember the year just started. We're in the first month, and the TSA no fly list has actually been leaked out in quite possibly the most laughable way I've ever seen. This didn't involve an individual going through, 9 proxies and breaching through some of the most hardened servers in the US federal system. No, it really took this person search engineing, looking through servers exposed to the internet, build servers, automation servers, and within a day, they found out one of the most secretive documents to exist. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is no bigger cause for concern for some of these companies and making sure their cybersecurity practices are up to date and snuff, I don't know what is. This is me, Mutahar, and hopefully you all learned something. Hopefully you had a laugh. And, if you're wondering, man, why can't I fly through the United States? Am I on the no-fly list? You probably already know it, obviously, if you've ever been hassled at the airport pretty heavily. But, yeah, that one document's been leaked in the wildest ways I've ever seen. I can't believe it, dude. This is insane. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mutahar, and I am out.